Hi, welcome to the video on Latin conditionals. In this video, we're going to explore the idea of not just a general conditional with the indicative, which is just something like if this happens, then this thing will happen, or something like that, but also of a lot of subjunctive conditionals, which are much more along the lines of something that's contrary to what's reality, or something that could have been reality, or something in the future that's a bit uncertain. So, hopefully, if you're watching this video, we're going to give you a good introduction to everything you need to know about conditionals. Although I'm going to go quickly through the indicative ones simply because they're pretty easy to translate by themselves. There's not really a special way to do it. So with that in mind, we can get started here. And what I'm gonna do is each time I conclude kind of a section, I'm gonna pause the video, erase, and write everything I need to write. So in the video, you should see me talking. It comes to an end of dialogue, and then immediately it should switch to the next screen. So that's the format we've got, and I hope you enjoy. Make sure you're taking notes if you're learning this for the first time, or if you're refreshing. Make sure that you're checking for whatever it is that you're looking for help on. Okay, so I'll change the screen and we'll get started. So we're going to start with the basic indicative conditions. This is going to be something that's not very complicated. You can treat these just like dependent clauses in the past. They have indicative verbs, which means that these are certainties. These are things that we're not questioning at all. There's no problems about how vivid it's going to be. There's no problems about any kind of hypotheticals. This is simply stating facts like of causation. If this, then this. And so we have to start off with our vocab with all of the conditionals because you have here the word see. See is our word in Latin for if, and nisi, which is kind of like a combination of ne and si. It means if not. And if you think about it in English, you could say if something doesn't happen, then this will happen, or something like that. And that really what that means, if you kind of extrapolate it out, it kind of also means unless. So there's kind of a, if you don't want to use an if something sounds better with unless, it's probably going to be okay to use that for nisi. So really key here that you have your vocab see and nisi, if and if not, or unless. So I put here an example, something that's grammatically pretty easy, but it kind of shows you the clauses in the indicative. So you can see, just like any other clause, a C clause is going to make some brackets. It's going to be a dependent clause. It's going to stay together, and then you can separate it from the main clause like so. So you see, Caesarem Brutus, just like normal, we have our accusative, our nominative, and our verb, and then Republica is going to be your subject with that fifth declension es and that a, and then conservabitur as our verb. Notice the be, which gives you a future tense, and you notice the futur, which gives you the passive voice. Okay, so what you're going to end up with is if Brutus kills Caesar. Notice that nice present tense. If he does do it, if he kills Caesar, the republic will be saved. Now, historically accurate or not, what I'm saying in the language here is that, like, if this happens, all right, if should Brutus kill Caesar in general, so if Brutus does kill Caesar, like, we almost have a certainty this will happen. The uncertain future is actually reserved for a subjunctive, which we'll get to in this video, but that's just not what's going on here. We have indicative conditions right here, and therefore everything's a certainty. Okay? So, one more time, if Brutus kills Caesar, the Republic will be saved. And notice the will be saved, we get that passive verb. In case that you need to review those, go ahead and check out another video, or go in a textbook and read up on the passive voice, or ask your teacher. But basic indicative condition is quite easy to translate. This is not a problem. It's really when you get the subjunctive conditions that we're going to have a bit of a translation, a guide in English that you're going to have to follow because we don't use them, I don't think, as often as we should in English. So anyway, enjoy this when it happens, when you have an indicative condition, or if you have a nisi. that is, you translate it as unless, and it's a nice, beautiful one. It would be great. So actually, what I'm going to do before I switch, I'm going to change the sentence just a little bit. So we're going to insert nisi Caesarem Brutus occidit, res publica non conservabitur. So what that did was it changed the meaning of the sentence a bit because now we have if Brutus does not kill Caesar. So that's where your not comes in on the if not. Um, the Republic will not be saved. We've kind of doubled up on the negatives, which means you don't necessarily have to, but it does kind of say something different. So we're talking more about the absence of the killing of Caesar and the consequences of that, rather than the consequences or the condition of the Republic being saved. This is the consequence of what happens if Brutus does not kill Caesar. So we are flipping the sentence in a way that is significant. Um, so we have the Republic will not be saved. So what this could also mean is unless Brutus kills Caesar, so nisi can mean unless the Republic will not be saved, meaning that this has to happen for that to happen. Um, and you'll note it's very very slightly different, but it's actually still in the realm grammatically of the if not. It's kind of saying the same thing. So take that. Remember these words throughout the whole video. Si and nisi. They're going to be very important here. So I'm going to get now into some subjunctive conditions, which are going to help us with hypotheticals and with non-real situations, and we'll see, or maybe like future that's not certain, like this one seems to be, and we will see where that takes us. All right, so we're going to kind of start with our first subjunctive condition. And we're going to go from the most past all the way through the most future. So we're going to go past contrary to fact, then something called present contrary to fact, and then the future less vivid in the very end. So what we have here is an example of the past contrary to fact. Now, the past contrary to fact is essentially you're reflecting on if something had happened in the past that didn't actually happen. So the contrary to fact part of this is the idea that this is not something that actually happened, but we're kind of doing a what if it had happened situation, which is kind of what you have here in your formula. If something had verbed, blank would have verbed. So you're kind of talking about a consequence of a hypothetical past situation. Okay? So here we have si Hannibal Roma ipsam urbem aggressus esset. Populi Italiae altera lingua locuti accent. Again, it's kind of a basic sentence, but it really gets the gist of what's going on in these sentences. So we have our if, so we're going to make a bracket here. Moneyball is going to be our subject. We have our AM, AM, EM in interesting word order that I probably wouldn't do anywhere else, but here we are, and we have direct object for all of those, and then aggressus esset. That's going to be our verb. Now notice you have that nice perfect infinitive with the ending. Okay, so aggressus esse, you're thinking, oh, that's the perfect infinitive. Most of the time past, but this is or passive, but this is deponent. So we're just going to go with perfect deponent infinitive plus the ending, which gives you the subjunctive of the pluperfect, or in this case, deponent. Okay. Okay. So we have a subjunctive pluperfect deponent, aggressus asset. And we're going to then end our bracket because we have that verb in the C clause. We have our subject, we have our verb, we have our direct object. Okay? So here we have si Hannibal Roma usam urbem aggressus esset. And then the consequence of that is populi Italiae ultra lingua locuti essent. So you have the subject and your nominative plural there. Therefore, this is genitive. You get these nice ablatives here agreeing with each other. And then same philosophy on the form, and it's also still deponent because I tried to throw a couple deponent verbs in there for you, in case you needed some extra practice on those. And we have locuti asset, which is from loquor, which means to speak or to converse. Yeah, so this is again that form that where you see that perfect infinitive and you add the ending, and therefore it makes the subjunctive pluperfect opponent there as well. So what you have are two pluperfect subjunctive verbs in here. Okay, you have one in the clause, you have one outside the clause. So both the hypothetical situation and the hypothetical result of the situation are in the same pluperfect subjunctive here. Okay. And your translation has this formula up here. If something had happened, something would have happened. Okay. So specifically, now that we have our sentence labeled, now that we have this whole formula down for how to do the past contrary to fact, we translate. Si Hannibal Romam ipsam urum aggressus esse. If Hannibal had attacked Rome, the city of Rome itself. Okay, because remember that Hannibal he attacked a lot of Italy, but he never attacked the city itself. So if Hannibal had attacked the city of Rome itself, the peoples of Italy would have spoken altera lingua in another language. Okay, so the death of Latin, if you will. I don't know if that's even true. It's a contrary to fact. We don't know. However, I'm saying it like it's true because we have a hypothetical thing that didn't actually happen and a possible and maybe probable result of that. All right. And so the biggest takeaway from this example is that when you have the past contrary to fact, you have that double pluperfect, and you're doing the if something had happened, something else would have happened. Okay? That's the formula here. So look for that double pluperfect subjunctive and your C clause. All right, next we're going to go to the present contrary. Begin the present contrary to fact. Now, the present contrary to fact has like this idea that like right now, if I could change reality, it would be like this. So the famous one is from Fiddler on the Roof. I think I always think of the song "If I Were a Rich Man." All day long I bid it bum, which means like do nothing. So it's the idea that like I'm not rich, but if that were my reality, I would be doing this instead of what I'm doing right now. That's why it's called contrary to fact, because right it's a present hypothetical different situation. Okay, so Tevye in the Fiddler on the Roof. If I were a rich man, he's not. He's like a poor farmer or something. Actually, he's a milk guy. But he dreams about if he had lots of money, what he would do. Of course, he's not rich, and he wouldn't do those things because he's not rich. So it's all hypothetical. It's all contrary to fact, to reality. But it's still kind of a thought experiment of like, what if? That were the present situation. So the past contrary to fact is what if this had happened already? Like, and we think of the consequences of like some kind of past action. This is what if reality were different right now, what would be happening. Okay. And so that's kind of in English we don't often like use the correct cadences of words on these things, but this is where your were comes in. If I were a rich man, in this case you don't need the ing. All day long I would. As the song goes. Or like if you don't want like a song, you say, if I were rich, I would buy a big house. Okay, whatever you want. But anyway, in Latin, you see these things like so. We have chorus, the word for chariot. And then here's our nisi clause. So again, you have the C and nisi to start your clause. You bracket that off. And then you get discipulos meos latinam ego docerem facerem. And what you have here, your basic infinitive plus ending, your present active infinitive this time. Um, so you don't need to worry about any kind of like past infinitive or anything. This is your normal infinitive that you probably learned in Latin 1. And then you add an ending onto it. So this is the imperfect subjunctive, as you know from your forms. It's odd though. You're thinking the imperfect is a past tense. Well, if you remember, there's no future tense in the subjunctive because it just doesn't exist. your present tense is kind of going to be like taking the role of the future in the next one that you would do after the present contrary to fact, and therefore the next best thing for the present contrary to fact is the imperfect. And the logic there is kind of it makes a little bit of sense because imperfect means it's still not a complete action, so you could use that for the present. It's not complete. Present is never complete because it's ongoing. All right. So we have here the present subjunctive. I have a first person singular with ego there. And same thing here, facere, right? You get the infinitive facere with the M on it. That is our two part, just like the past contrary to fact had a two-part pluperfect subjunctive. Now we have a two-part imperfect subjunctive. Okay, so kurus, fourth declension means chariot, and this is going to be our accusative plural, fourth declension. And then nisi. Now, this is an interesting one because I think it translates much better as the if not, the way I wrote it, but you could put it unless. But I'm going to translate it as if not and see how it goes. If the unless works, I might use it later. I'm going to try both out loud for you, and you can see which one you like. So we have the discipulos, the accusative, the meos agreeing with it as the accusative. Latinam is accusative as well. We have a lot of accusatives. There's no ACI happening. Let me just tell you that dokerem, doke or dokere, takes two accusatives. Both the people you teach and the subject you teach are in the accusative, so it takes a double accusative. And then finally, fakerem to mate. And so that's going to go with our kuros as our subject verb and the direct object up here. I did this to make sure that you know that clauses can like kind of interrupt things. They don't always have to be nicely laid out, like the C clause goes first and then the other clause goes second. And you don't have to like assume that like you're going to have like this half of a sentence and this half of a sentence. They could interrupt just as easily. So here we have our example here. So we have if I were not teaching my students Latin, I would make chariots. Being from the Metro Detroit area, I'll tell you, insert cars there, and it probably would be it might actually be a possibility. If I weren't teaching Latin, I might be making cars. So, anyway, the idea here is I am teaching my students Latin. So if I were not, which is the contrary to fact, because I am, that's my job. I'm a Latin teacher. So if I weren't doing that, which is the contrary to fact, I would be doing the other thing that's also contrary to fact, which is making cars. I don't work in an auto factory, and nor do I design them or anything. So this is all contrary to my present fact. I am a Latin teacher and I don't make cars, but if I weren't teaching my students Latin, I would be making chariots or cars. And so you see how, first of all, your were would works nicely as a way to make that contrary to fact happen. So that's your cadence in English for how to do these. And I guess it's not too hard of a concept because it's talking about the present time. It's just kind of creating an alternative reality, if you will, in the present, not in the past, like the past contrary to fact was. And the other thing important to remember before we switch screens again is that the imperfect subjunctive is what you're doubling up on. So you have one, two of those, and notice it's in the main clause and in your conditional clause, your nisi clause. Okay. So you have two imperfect subjunctives. One's inside the clause, one's outside the clause. Can you put more than one? Yeah, you can put like a whole bunch of, you can put like, as many as you want inside the conditional clause and outside, as long as you have one inside and one outside, you have a present contrary to fact. You can have more in each clause as long as you have at least those two, the one on the inside and one on the outside. So we're going to wrap up with the future less vivid. We're not going to do any contrary to fact because in the future you don't know if it's fact or not, but it's less vivid as a certainty, and therefore it's called the future less vivid. We're going to get to that as I switch the screen here, and then we'll wrap up the video. All right, so now we begin the last type of subjunctive condition, and it's called the future less vivid. Now, the future less vivid is interesting because it's a little bit like what we did with the indicative condition, except it's less certain. I don't know if that makes sense, but if you know the subjunctive, you can maybe think about it as kind of like a should would situation. And this is where that's going to shine. Like those definitions of should and would are really going to shine in here because it really is something that you have no idea if it's going to happen. Now, the indicative condition, you had something like if Brutus kills Caesar, the Republic will be saved. It's very certain. Like if this happens, this will definitely happen. But this is a lot more of an uncertainty. You're adding all that uncertainty in with the subjunctive. And you'll note as we go through this one, nisi quis similis tibi maxime curet nihil umquam melius fiat. So both of these verbs that I've given you here, we'll do our brackets as we did, both of these verbs here are present subjunctive. Remember, there's no future subjunctive. So the next best thing is the present subjunctive. And that's kind of why, if you backtrack to the present contrary to fact, you actually have an imperfect verb. Okay, because you're using these present subjunctive patterns. So you have one, two, just like previously, and they're both in the present subjunctive. That's going to talk about a future hypothetical. It's not certain. Okay, it's not certain. And so we begin. Nisi quis. Quis is going to be singular, or the subject. It's actually aliquis, but that's a cool thing that I'm going to talk about after we translate. Hang on for that note. That's going to be cool. And then similis is a third declension adjective, so that actually agrees with it. With the is, just like omnis or gravis or anything like that. Timmy's dative, and it goes with similis as like similar to you. And then you have maxime, which is an adverb meaning very, very much. And then curet, which means to care a lot about something or somebody. And then we have nihil, unquam. So nihil, we're going to treat that like a subject. It's indeclinable, so you don't really do much with that anyway in terms of form. And then unquam is an adverb, means ever. And then melius, the ius, is a comparative neuter, which is going kind of with melius. But it's actually going to be with the subject complement here because of fiat, to happen or become. Okay. All right. So, again, I want to point out that you have these present subjunctives, and we're going to follow this. If something should happen, this would happen. So, the should is putting you in the future. Like, if this should happen tomorrow, if this should happen in a year, something else would happen. There's the consequence. Again, the uncertain thing that could happen. Okay. So you have unless. I'm going to use unless here simply because this is actually kind of a quote from the Lorax, and in English, Dr. Seuss uses unless. So unless somebody similar to you should care very much, you should care very much, nothing ever will become better. It would not. The it would not I added in there simply because that's how the Dr. Seuss book goes. So I love to use this example as the future less vivid because um, it really gives an idea of like caring about the future. But like it's also you know it's also really good for our uncertainty. And I think that this is a really solid example if you remember your childhood and remember the Lorax. So cheers. But anyway, final translation: unless someone similar to you should care a whole awful lot, nothing ever will become better. And so note the present subjunctive, one of them inside the clause, one of them outside the clause. Just like your previous conditionals, you need one of those subjunctives inside, one outside, in order to create this idea, this pattern, this future less vivid pattern. If something should happen, this would happen. Okay. So those are really the three conditional clauses that you have to know in a subjunctive. And of course, don't discount the idea that you can have an indicative. You don't have to worry about anything if it's indicative. You translate everything normally. Present tense is translated present tense, past is past, etc., in the indicative. It's the subjunctives that have these cool patterns that I want you to know, though. Well, what's going on with this aliquot? That's the last little note I want to point out. It's not just conditional clauses where this is a thing. So we're going to use a side note. I'm going to use a different color here. Let's see if yellow works. Apparently not. There we go. Ooh, that's nice. Okay. So I have a little rhyme for you. It's kind of an oddity of Latin. I'm not even sure why it happens. I'm sure somebody in the comments will tell me why it happens or something. But I always learned it. I have a rhyme for it to help you remember it. But if you have like a quiz or a quid or something after a word like nisi, so check this out. After si, nisi, num, and ne, all the ollies fade away. Okay? So yeah, after si, nisi, num, and ne, all the ollies fade away. That's why this word is translated as somebody. Because aliquis. Aliquis is the word for somebody. But for some reason, after these subordinating conjunctions, right there, here's nisi, that's one of them. This ollie just gets chopped off of it, and it's just quis. Even though it means the same thing, it's still aliquis in meaning. It's just quis. So that's why this nisi quis is really how you do that because the ollie faded away. It's gone. So I want you to remember this rule because you're going to see it again. I promise. Okay. And because C and Nisi are on this list, that's why I kind of saved it until now during the conditionals to introduce it to you. I know we've done nay before, but I haven't really done anything with that with the aliquis or the quiz. So this is a vocab word I want you to know. All right. So aliquis, it's somebody, and if you make it neuter, it can be something. And then that ollie can get chopped off after C, Nisi, Num, and Nay. So it's pretty cool. All right. So there's that. All right. So to wrap up this video, um, keep in mind when you're doing conditionals, you're always looking at the tenses of those verbs and the moods of those verbs. Okay, so check to see if they're subjunctive, check to see the tenses, and authors are going to mix and match the tenses. So you got to do the best you can with the patterning. Some authors will be really nice with the patterns and they'll give you a pluperfect subjunctive and a pluperfect subjunctive, and you know exactly what to do. But if you get like a C and then a pluperfect, and he gives you some kind of like either perfect or present tense or some or imperfect subjunctive or something in the main clause, you got to roll with it. You just throw like a would in there and see if it works. But honestly, a lot of conditionals I found as I do as I teach students, the more that you're confident with your ability to just kind of like do what you think makes sense for the tense, but also like what is making sense for what's in the Latin for the storytelling and the narrative. That's probably correct. To be honest, I mean, some people get it wrong, but I found that more students are just confident with their ability to say, "All right, I got pluperfects. I'm going to use the had. But if I have some other tense in the other half, maybe I'm just gonna throw in a would or throw in a something else that makes sense. And usually it does. So I don't want you to be intimidated by these. You have patterns to follow, and you have language skills. So do the best you can. I hope it was helpful. Try to keep it brief. I'll see you next time. I'm going to try to keep using this cool technology I'm using to get the glass and the writing to work like this. I think it's pretty cool. So if any of my videos in the future have this thing, you'll know I'm kind of having fun using it. So hope you enjoy. Thank you so much. Have a good day. Valete.